there, this is Shauna Noel, and I want to show you some quick techniques for painting in your Bible. I am going to be using some different bases, including the Mod Podge, some white paint, and then some gesso. Now, these are just things I had around my house. I encourage you guys to experiment with whatever you may have. I like to put down different bases on my page and then build paint on top of it and watch how the paint reacts different to each one of those. So I just quickly showed you how I applied each one of those different elements onto my page and gave it a quick dry. And now I'm going to use the Illustrated Faith watercolors, and I'm just going to put this down in different pockets of color, and I'm applying the paint so that some of the pigment sits a little bit darker and some is a little bit lighter. In this process, I really encourage you guys to try different techniques, try different bases, Mod Podge, gesso, paint, clear gesso, different things like that. Try different techniques with brushes. Try this technique where I've taken some deli paper and I'm rubbing around the wet paint onto the page, and it gives it this very shadowy, cloudy look. Try blow drying with a hair dryer. What I really want you guys to do in this process is enjoy it. I want you guys to have fun, experiment. Don't worry too much about the end product. Just kind of look at it as almost like a scientist. How does different product react to different things and along the process? So depending on what you put down as your base will depend on how the paint reacts. So as you can see from my page already, that depending on, even in one puddle of color, depending on where it landed on the gesso or on the Mod Podge, it's going to react completely different. And then depending on how you apply those things. So if you put Mod Podge down with a sponge brush, it's going to have a different texture and layer and look than if you put it down with a credit card. So I want you guys just to really have fun with this and experiment and learn along the way what you like. Do you like different textures within the same page? Do you like a really smooth look? I really love it when the color kind of reacts differently, like you're seeing on my page. So there's some puddles of really darkness, there's some puddles where it's really light, and then there's a lot of texture. If you see it in person, you can really see what it was applied with, what direction even it was applied in. And that is just so much fun, and that's what's really going to create those interesting depths of background, so that you have different colors and textures and different opacity of the colors. And so I would love to see what you guys do with this technique of really just playing around with that. So I'm going to go ahead and add some yellows. Typically when I am playing with these techniques of creating these backgrounds with lots of colors and textures and layers, one thing I like to do is play with colors that are on the same side of the color wheel or are next to each other on the color wheel. So like pink, yellow, orange, or blue, green, purple even, or dark blue and aqua. Play with those colors together so that as I'm layering the colors, they work well and play together. Even if they're maybe not completely dry, I can still kind of fudge it a little bit because they all look beautiful together. So it kind of takes one element out. But a fun technique also is then to layer in one unexpected color. So if I decided to do all pinks, oranges, and yellows and added a green or a blue, that kind of adds some visual interest as well. Today I'm just going to stick to my favorite, which is like the pinks, oranges, and yellows. I really like to play with these colors a lot. I just find them so peaceful and happy, and I love the end result. So as you can see, I'm just continuing to layer up the different colors. I'm drying in between. I'm using the deli paper to pick up any extra spots as well and help me spread that around. And I'm kind of paying attention to the composition of the page. And I like a lot of pop in my colors. Some may like a lighter look. So that is something that I'm continuing to build those colors with. Here I'm adding just some sprinkles with dipping the paintbrush into the paint and then lightly tapping it so it kind of splashes on the page. I love doing that with white, which you'll see me do here. It's kind of hard to see that in the video, but in person there's just this little extra touch of white splashes across the page, which I really like. So again, continuing to dry. I get a lot of questions about what kind of dryer this is, and this is just a craft air dryer, and you can get them at any local craft store or even Amazon. Or a lot of times if I'm not making a video, I'll just let it naturally dry in between. Don't be afraid to do that as well. It will give you a different result because the heat is actually pushing color across the page. So that is another way that you can play with the different layers and things like that. It's also very cold in my house, which is why you keep seeing me hit my hand with the heat, because I love the warm air coming off it. We just keep our house pretty cool during the day since it's only me here. So I continue to build up these colors. Now I'm going to try to do my journaling, and a lot of the times my journaling will be pretty bold and kind of a focus point in my entries, but sometimes I have more personal journaling and I want to have that almost as part of the background of the image, which is what I'm doing here. You'll see this technique in a lot of art journaling approaches, and I love incorporating this in my Bible journaling. I do have a lot of white pens laying around, and I often find that most of them don't work the way I want them to. A good white pen is hard to find, or I'll have it dried out, or I clog it up. So I keep a couple around just so I can try different ones to see what works best for me. And then I also have the Faber-Castell marker pen that I like to add little elements as well. But don't be afraid to do your journaling in a personal, meaningful way to you. It doesn't always have to make sense to everyone else, and that's perfectly okay. This is free from insecurity is what I was working on this day, and that's absolutely something that I think many of us struggle with, and many of us will continue to process through this process, and it's not something that I always am wanting to share all my insecurities, obviously, with everyone. So the ability to have journaling that's so meaningful and personal that I can share with you is just, it's fun to me, and I love the symbolicness also of kind of hiding that journaling and insecurities within the colors and clouds of colors. It's all part of that art journaling process for me. At the end, I'm going to add some of my favorite Portrait Pink Liquitex, just little patterns across the page. It was at this point that I decided I really wanted a little bit more of a pop of color, so I grabbed some bright pink and did some more dramatic marks across the page. And again, what's really fun about this technique of building your layers and art journaling is that you can keep building upon those layers until you feel like it's complete. And even if I walked away from this page today and wanted to come back at another time, that is absolutely something you can do. And honestly, it's sometimes really rewarding to do it that way, and that you may have thought about it or prayed over it or kind of come to a different place with it. I am showing you that I lost my stamps, which happens to me. I wanted to use the stamps from the kit on this part, but I completely lost them. Don't worry, I found them since then. But I was like, oh man, I was super frustrated. So I'm getting the stuff for my title together. I have pulled out those little wooden alphas those are like from the dollar section at most craft supply stores. I collect them and then I like to mix and match them. And so I've pulled out FROM because we have used that in every entry. So I have that available for all my entries for this devotional. So that way I can just put free and then from and then whatever the prompt is from that day. I decided to type the prompt insecurity on my typewriter so that I had that ready to go. On some of those longer words, I like to type them out or handwrite them out just because the alphabets may not fit, that sort of thing. And this one for me was very simple. I wanted to keep the title simple, the journaling in the background, and just kind of this beautiful cloud of freedom around that. And that's what's great about Bible journaling, is we don't really have to explain the symbolism to anyone else. We can just see it, know it, and love it, and enjoy it. And so that's what I've done with this, is really just enjoy this process, this time with God, praying over my insecurities, praying that I can just hand it over to Him and grow from that period. I've decided to add some more layers here, so I'm using a Neocolor crayon to add little crosses across the page. Again, it's just all about all those layers and having fun with them. I do notice that my eye is kind of drawn to the empty space next to free because I put insecurity right below it. So whenever you find yourself drawn to a certain area, you need to think, am I being drawn to this place on purpose, or is this something that I need to add additional elements too. And this is just from a design point. This isn't about Bible journaling. So if you're like, well, it doesn't really matter because I'm Bible journaling, that's the purpose. Awesome. But if you are wanting some design technique tips, anytime you're kind of like your eye keeps going to a place, you need to address that, whether that's purposeful or whether you just need to bring in something else. And so I'm glad I brought in that heart for me, and you may feel completely different. It helps balance out that title area for me. And it's interesting when you look at a page and you see such a small little word, that insecurity, the word is big, the meaning is big, but I just typed it on that small word, placed it there, and what a big impact it can have on your design that you may need to correct in other areas. I know a lot of people ask about composition and things like that, and it just takes practice and eye, and what's awesome about that sort of thing is that it's all relative, you know, it's a matter of what you like, and so you should absolutely be at peace with your page when you're done. And as I always say, it's really about the process, and don't worry so much about the product. As this process for me was so fun and therapeutic and happy and joyful, and I was able to learn and grow, and really at the end know that that is reflecting what is happening in my prayers and thoughts as I work through this wonderful devotional that Becca has shared with us. On the top, I'm going to go ahead and add my little mini hexies, which I am completely smitten with. I love these things. I love to cluster them on pages. They just add for me that extra little finishing touch that pulls it all together. It gives it a little dimension. It has some extra words I may be thinking about, and it just gives it that little thing at the end that I just love. And some of you may be worried about the dimension. I don't find it to be a problem. You might have to be aware, like if I were to be journaling on the back side of this page, I wouldn't want to use like a pin right over that same area. It might poke through. So just be aware of that. And that's all a process of deciding if you want to use dimension in your Bible, or if you're more comfortable just using stamps and stickers. Like, that's completely up to you, and that's what's beautiful about it. I'm going to go ahead and draw some little hexy shapes just to kind of pull that design element into the rest of the page and kind of create a different dimension with it. And I'm using a pencil here, which I didn't used to use very often in my art or art journaling, but Stephanie Ackerman uses often, and she actually passes them out in her class. And so I've learned to love it, and it's just almost like a different texture, and the color gray is so different than the black that I typically use my Illustrated Faith pen for. And so it's just fun to kind of play with different, again, like we talked about earlier, different elements, different techniques, and enjoying that process. I hope that you guys are really enjoying this devotional from Becca, Free to Flourish. It's just beautiful. I'm only on, I think, day 4, and I am just like so in love with each one. Has such meaning and powerful prayer and thought and Bible verses behind them that I'm really enjoying the process. I'm really enjoying the reflection that I'm able to have, and I'm hoping you guys are able to have too. I'm going to go ahead and link to that kit below. If you catch this video before the end of March 2017, make sure to use code 25FORYOU to save 25% off and get free shipping on that kit. You can add other things to your cart as well while you're there, like the paints or washi tape. And then why don't you guys go ahead and subscribe to the Illustrated Faith channel if you're watching. If you haven't already, we would love to have you as a subscriber, and leave a comment. Let us know what you're up to. Let us know any technique questions that you have about Bible journaling. I've been trying to do a better job at using YouTube as a social media platform and answering those questions you guys have. And so I just appreciate you guys reaching out. All right, you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining us.